Hello and welcome to Console Cowboys. So today we're going to cover the real world usage and how we're actually using these practical physical exploitation stealth readers in the field to gain access to facilities on physical penetration tests. I'm going to go over some gotchas and some things you need to think about when using these with your recon, as well as implementing social engineering, whether written or in person, to make all of this stuff work better. Then we're going to unbox it. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to configure it. We're going to use it. We're going to encode some cards and we're going to test them out. We're going to check the frequencies that are running, all the things associated with this. So this is going to be a real world kind of boot camp video on utilizing these for your physical penetration test. If that sounds good to you, then stick around and we will get started right now. So we'll quickly cover what this reader is and what it looks like, and then we'll get into actually unboxing it and doing some stuff. So on the screen, I have a picture of the reader from the Physical Exploit site. It's just your typical HID reader that you see stuck on walls within facilities. And to get a closer look, it says HID Multiclass SE. Now, if we take a look at it on the outside, on the back, we have some sticky tape with some Velcro. We just peel that off and stick it to a wall. And inside, if you take a look, we have a lithium Tenergy battery being plugged in here. It's just a 9-volt battery. And then we have a ESP32 key, which is running an access point and then some software to collect that card data for you. Then it's running that access point. You can connect to it via RFID local 192.168.4.1 once you connect to the Doppleganger SSID with the default password there, which you can also change. And then you get access to this web page. And on this web page, you can see all the data that's coming in. You can connect to it semi-remotely, based on the distance that Wi-Fi can go. Configure your card, walk up, scan it, and if it works, pull your reader off the wall. So that is a very high level of how this works and what it looks like. The documentation is quite good. You could take a read through, and it shows you commands on configuring cards from the data that you get. And it shows you setting this all up. It gives you suggestions on batteries that work better, all of those things. So I don't really need to cover that in detail, but we are going to physically do it now. So I'm going to turn on my other camera and we're going to take a look at the device. We're going to unscrew it, we're going to configure it, and play around with it a little bit. So let me do that right now, 1 second. All right, so I have a bunch of stuff on my desk. We're gonna move all of this stuff aside and take a look at the reader. So if I open up the box, we have a reader here. So the first thing, it looks exactly like the one in the photo. And the thing that we need to do is take this screw out that's at the bottom. So we'll need a Phillips head screwdriver, and we just pop this right open. We open that up, it looks like the photo in the screen where we have the ESP32 and we have a place to put a battery. Now if we pop a battery in this, it will then launch the access point and we can utilize it. But before we do that, let's talk a little about some tips and tricks with this. So once we put the battery in, and I have one of these Tenergy batteries, this thing is gonna last about 6 hours. However, the low frequency antenna is going to die on you after a couple hours and then only going to get high frequency reads. So this is where your recon comes in. So let's start out with the recon phase. When we are doing an attack with this reader, we need to do our recon and watch the door for a full day and see when people are going out the doors, when people are going in the doors, because we don't know if they're coming in from different locations. There might be different locations around the building with badge readers on all of them. We don't want to deploy this and have nobody scan the badges and have that low frequency antenna go out on us. I've had that happen before, and then I'm not getting the reads that I need. So we want to watch the building, do our recon, know when these people are going to enter this building, and then come back the next day and install this at the most opportune time. That way, when they're scanning their badges, it's going to work on anything that gets scanned on there that this supports. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 regarding batteries is, in this box, we have something called a stealth card. Now, when you pop in the battery, you close this guy up, and it gets started, it's going to be running an access point. And we're going to connect to that access point, and we're going to be able to look at the data. However, Wi-Fi access points waste a lot of battery. So when you use this card, we can scan it, it'll beep, and once it does that, it turns the access point off. Now this is going to extend the life of that low frequency antenna battery and allow our reader to work longer. However, we're not going to be able to connect to the access point and get that data locally. We'll have to walk up and scan this again, and it will turn on the access point, and then we can retrieve that data. So those are things to think about. So it depends. If you know everybody's coming in right after lunch at 12:31, then pop it on the wall at 12:15, get all your reads at 12:30, and you can connect to the access point, configure a card, walk in, make sure it works, pull this off the wall, and you're golden. However, if it's a lot more sporadic than that, and you're not quite sure because it's very low volume going into those doors and there might be a lot of ways in, and you got to deploy it for a long period of time, you might want to use this card and then just watch, wait for someone to scan it, walk up, scan it, grab your data or grab the badge reader and go. So those are just some tips because I don't want you to miss your opportunity, because you might be walking in front of cameras and everything else, might be nervous, and you might only have one shot at this, and you don't want to screw it up by just screwing up your timing. So that's tip number one. So once you get all your recon done and you're ready to deploy this thing, how do we do it? So first, let's give this some power. So we got to pop in our 9-volt battery, and there's a little bit of a trick to this. So you want to have it angled up because there's not a lot of space to get your finger in here. So push it together and it'll beep. And then you push it in as you slide it down and it'll snap in place. You'll get used to it. At first you'll be fiddling around, but it's not too bad. And then you have like a little lip here and a little lip here. You want to get this lip pretty close to this lip, but underneath it. So push it up a little, then slide that in and it'll go in nice and clean. And you want to make sure the wires don't get caught in there. And then you put the screw back in here. So now you have a reader on the wall. This is your target. And you have this one, and this is booting up. So once it's good to go, you pull the tape off of here, and you'll be all sticky. You'll walk up, and you'll stick this on the wall, and you'll walk away. Now, what is the benefit of this, and what is the con of this? The benefit is that you have a malicious reader that somebody might scan on, and it will let you into the building. The negative is that people generally run through their day and they don't pay attention to anything that's going on. So you're going to walk up and they're going to see a new reader and say, this one lets me in the door. And they're going to swipe their reader and they're going to go inside the building. Okay. And they may swipe this because they screw up and they weren't paying attention, but likely they're just going to swipe this one. So how do we make them swipe this one? So we add in a little social engineering. And this is going to be through a nice little sign. So here's a real sign I used on an engagement, and this actually works. I said, training new badge reader, please swipe badge on both readers. So this is asking them to be helpful and letting them know, hey, there's a new sign there. What does that say? Oh, I need to scan both readers. This is for me. So what we're going to do is before we go to the wall, we're going to put tape on this so it's all good to go. We don't want to be trying to fumble around with packing tape up near the building. We're going to pull the tape off of the back of here. And when I walk up to the building, I'm going to stick this on the wall next to the reader. Then either just above my reader, if depending on the space, or above both, I'm going to stick this on the wall, secure it, and I'm going to walk away. And now what changed in the mindset? Well, in the mindset of the user is going to say, here's my reader, it lets me in the building. Wait, training new badge reader, please swipe badge on both readers. Oh, I need to swipe both. No problem. And I'm going to go inside the building and I'm never going to think about this again. I was helpful. And there's nothing triggering about this why I need to think about it. It seems reasonable. And that's what you want it to do, seem reasonable. Now, I did get one suggestion from somebody, which was to add other elements of social engineering into this message. Now, you can do that, but be careful, and I'll tell you why. So what they wanted me to do, and I don't suggest you do this, is training new badge reader. Please swipe badge reader on both readers so you don't lose access next week. Well, that will probably work. It adds urgency to it. It makes them not want to lose access. But what I don't want them to do is I don't want them to go inside, worry that they might lose access next week, and ask somebody about it. I want them to swipe it, forget about it, and go inside and never think about it again. So when I pull it off the wall, they don't even think twice. So while that might work, I wouldn't suggest it, but it is something that you can play around with if you need to. So that would be another level of social engineering. But how do we ramp up this social engineering a little more? Let's say we have this on here. We did our recon yesterday and people were coming through the door at 12 o'clock. And it's about, I don't know, 12:30 now and nobody's come to the building. And we're like, wait a second. Everybody came in at 12:30 yesterday. We didn't realize that there was some kind of off-site meeting and nobody's showing up today. But we do see a couple employees around the parking lot. Maybe they're eating lunch outside. Maybe they're doing something else. Or they walked out of the building and they're going somewhere else, but they're not walking in the building. What we can do is pull this off of the wall. And we can walk up to a legitimate employee. And we say, hey, we are training these new wireless readers and we want to make sure they're working before we deploy it, but we notice nobody's going through the door today. Did we come on a bad day? And they'll say whatever, and you'll say, can you scan your badge on there so that I can make sure this is talking to the controller so when you guys get back from your thing that everything flows smoothly for you? And they'll say, yeah, no problem. And they'll walk up and they'll swipe their badge. And now you have their badge read. Now, when you do this, you want to have, your little electrician's bag with you or whatever, your little side bag. So it looks like you're a worker. Maybe you hand them an electrician's card or some kind of installation place card, security card, whatever it is, just to legitimize yourself a little bit before you ask them to do this reader. And then you walk up, put it back on the wall, smile, thank them so much, and walk away. As soon as they're gone, connect to the access point, make sure you got that read, take this off the wall and leave, and they'll never think about it again. That would be the next level of social engineering. So we have our little kind of passive social engineering where we're getting them to do what we want with the paper. And then we have our active social engineering where we're just going to actually just ask them, please scan this for us. We want to make sure that it's working. And they don't know that there's, this is a wireless reader is probably complete BS. So that's how we're going to do it. And now we have a read. What do we do now? We are going to connect to the access point running on this reader and get the data from when we did our social engineering. So in order to do that, we need to connect to the access point on here. Should be an SSID with Doppleganger in it, and under the radar is the password. So I'm going to connect to that now. All right, I'm connected up. And once you do that, you go to rfid.local or this 192.168.4.1 in your web browser, and you should see data like this. Also, if you see this facility code 222 and 1337, like in these two last examples, that is the data from your stealth card if you used it, just so you don't think that's an actual card. 1337, obviously not legitimate or probably not legitimate. So just so that doesn't trip you up. And it actually says that right here as well. Now, let's open up our page here. So I'm going to go to the IP address. And we'll see the two reads from when we scanned it with the paper and with our social engineering in person. Now, what I can do is I can go to reset, and we can just get rid of that data. So you see how to do that. And it will warn me it's erasing the data. And then I'm going to go to the home screen. And you'll see the data is gone. Now, if I scan this, let's see I had this access point up and I watched somebody walk up to the door and they scan the reader and I hit reload. I'm now going to see my data. So my data is bit length of 26, facility code of 42, and this is my card number. I'm going to copy that. And what I need to do is I need to go into my Kali VM and I need to use this Proxmark and encode a card so that it will work with this reader. That way I can walk up and use it on the real one and get access to the facility. So let's do that now. So back in the documentation will tell us how to utilize all of this. So if we scroll down the documentation, there's two different types of cards. We have our low frequency and our high frequency. Our low frequency would use our T557 card, And our high frequency used the I-class card. Now the low frequency card, we just go to our Proxmark software and do LF for low frequency, HID clone, H10301, and then we do facility code and card number. But we are using an I-class card, which is a high frequency card, which is a little harder, and that's why I want to go over this one, because that one's as simple as typing that command, putting the card on here, and running it. But the I-class card, we have to calculate some things, run multiple commands to encode the blocks on the card. So we can do that with a card calculator. We run that with our I-class, the facility code, card number, and the bit number, and then all we do is run the commands that it spits out. So let me show you how to do that. So in my tools directory here, I have a card calculator PY. So we're gonna run that with Python. We're gonna run it with I-class because that's the type of card we're using. We're using a high frequency I-class card with 42 for the facility code, card number of 16180, and the bit length of 26. That all came from the web page of the data we collected. And if I hit enter on that, it's going to give me 4 commands to run to write the blocks 6, 7, 8, and 9 with this data right here. So in order to do that, we would open up the PM3 software with my Proxmark connected. Now, if it wasn't connected, it would complain. And if I disconnect it while it's running, it will say offline. And if I connect it back in, it will say that the USB is connected, just so that you see the different errors and you know what to do when you're troubleshooting. So that popped up back online. Now, once that's online, all we do is copy paste in each of these commands, and it would encode all the data onto the card. We can walk up to the reader after verifying it, and then we can get inside. But right now, that's not going to work because our card's not good to go. So if we hit that, it says denied. And so we need to run all of these commands, but there's a better way to do it than just copying these in and then manually verifying. We can do this all automated with some other software that Practical Physical Exploitation made. So let's do that instead. I just want to show you all the ways to do it and different errors along the way so you can troubleshoot. I like to be thorough with these things. So if you go to the Doppleganger Assistant page, open that up. It'll show you a little thing with the GUI working, and it'll say for Linux you can install it. With this command, it'll run it on Bash and just install it. There's also some directions for Windows or Mac if that's what you're doing. But Linux, just run the command. And once you run the command, you'll be good to go. And you can spit out the commands that we just spit out, or you can automate it. And you can do I-class 26-bit, 35, and here's the other bits and types of cards that you can do. So what we want to do is pop back in here, and I'm going to say Doppleganger Assistant, because I already have it installed. I'm going to get rid of all this data, and we're just going to open the UI. So if we open up the UI, it defaults to Prox, which would be our low frequency card. And we want to do an I-class card, 26-bit. We want to put in our facility code of 42 and our card number, and then it can generate those values for us just like it did with the card calculator. But we can also do a write and verify card data. So we'll generate the commands, it will run the commands on our Proxmark onto our card, and then it will verify that the data is correct for us. We're going to do that, but we're going to do it from the command line, so I'm showing you all the different ways to do it. You could just hit go and it should work, but instead we're going to pop our card on here like this. And we're going to run Doppleganger Assistant. And we're going to run -T I-class, a bit length of 26, a facility code of 42, our card number of 16180, with a -W for write, and I believe -V is verify. So we hit OK. Now I'm going to get an error when I run this. First it says a little bit of information about the antenna, etc. And it gives us the commands that it's going to run so we can verify that those commands are correct. And I hit return, and we're going to get an error. And if we read the error, it'll tell us why. So it says, using UART port dev TTY ACM, serial port claimed by another process. What does that mean? Well, we have claimed it within PM3 here, so we need to get out of here. So I'm going to Control-Z, Control-C, and then it should work over here, or we're going to reconnect it. Now it's not claimed by that software. It should work. So So if I hit enter now, it's writing block 6, and it will go through each of the blocks and write each of the data, all 4 commands. Once it does that, it's going to verify the data. And it says that the verification was successful for the card number and the facility code. And you can see the data written to each of the blocks here. Here's block 6, here's block 7, etc., etc. And that is our data. So we can verify all of that stuff. But what really matters is this is written now and it's verified. So if I hit that now, it says access granted. And that would be what would happen. So let's go back through the whole process and talk about what happened. So we installed this, we put it on the wall with a little bit of social engineering, or we walked up to somebody. And we only did this after we did our recon phase and we looked at the best time of day to put this on, because these batteries do not last long. And the time that we were talking, my battery already started flashing and freaking out on me. That's why it's not blinking now. I pulled the battery out. So once that's done, we are going to watch, and we can turn off the Wi-Fi access point with the Stealth Reader in order to save battery. And when somebody scans it, or we walk up to somebody and they scan it, we're going to connect to the web page. We're going to look at the data. If the data looks good, we're going to go in here and we're going to encode this data onto these cards with our Doppleganger assistant, or manually, or we're going to calculate it and then put the commands in, or use the UI, whatever you want to do. Once you have that card that works, you're going to walk up to this door and you're going to get access to the facility. And that's the whole process beginning to end, with some gotchas, some errors, and some real world stuff. I hope this was really, really helpful to you. If it was, subscribe and please share this out with other people. And I have another one coming up. I'll show you how to do some stuff with a flipper after this. But right now I just wanted to get this out of here. So I haven't seen a lot of information on using these stealth readers. So now you know how to do everything with that. And maybe if I grab one of those multi-factor readers, I will roll through some of that with the keypad stuff. But I don't currently have one of those. But this is some real world stuff that I'm doing in real life. So hopefully it was helpful for you to see all of that.